Good morning, Gizmodo Japan, Kyle. Today I'm going to speak in English. Today I am using the FX30 and I will be climbing Mount Takao. I'll be talking about this camera and my thoughts, essentially. To start off with, we have a nice view of a little waterfall here. Yeah, let's take this camera for a spin and see how it goes. The camera I'm using obviously right now is the FX30 with the 10 to 20 G lens, f4.0 fixed aperture. Yeah, it's a nice little lens. And another lens I'll be using today, 11mm f1.8 fixed aperture. APS-C. That's the thing is APS-C is going to be a smaller sensor, so it's going to be gathering less light. And the lenses, while smaller and lighter, there are some drawbacks to this. Me having shot full frame for the past 3 or 4 years, I moved over from Blackmagic to Sony. Definitely really enjoyed the changeover from a smaller sensor to a larger sensor, and I've gotten used to it. Not having it makes a huge difference in my workflow. So already, assuming I was to use this camera, the FX30, for work, I'd probably have some problems for people who have full frame lenses and full frame cameras already. I don't want to say it doesn't make much sense to buy this camera, the FX30. I kind of find it hard to recommend that. Once you have these APS-C lenses and you have full frame cameras, depending on your camera, let's say you use an FX3 or an A7S III, you won't be able to use that Super 35 crop. However, if you have an A7 IV or the newly announced A7 R5 or A7 R5 IV, you'll be able to use APS-C lenses in the Super 35 crop. Japanese mountain climbing is, at least this mountain is much different than America. In America, it's all dirt, but they definitely made this accessible with like benches and, this paving. It's really nice. It makes for an easy experience. Can adjust my ND filter. I've got 2 stops FND. So what I can do is press this button here, brighten up the image. This is the second base ISO 2500, and then the FX30, similar to the FX3, has the zoom rocker. So I can do a slow zoom in like this with compatible lenses, power zoom lenses. You can use this on like product shots and stuff. Look at this tree. It's huge. 10mm APS-C. This thing is tiny, the lens. Going back to my point earlier about investing in APS-C. If you don't have a camera and you're looking for a YouTube camera, APS-C, especially at this price point and this image quality, makes a lot of sense. This is the first APS-C sensor of Sony that has 10-bit, aside from something like the FS5 or the FS7. Now you might be thinking 26 megapixels, good for photo, right? Unfortunately not. This FX30, it lacks a lot of photo features that are really quite essential to photographers. So I'd really say this is a video camera first. Some of those features being there's no mechanical shutter. So on fast-moving shots, such as a bird, or if you're taking a shot of a train or a vehicle or something, it's electronic shutter. So you'll get just this object that might be cut off. I'll try to put an example or shoot an example of this. Additionally, there's no drive mode. So if you like to take photos of sports or just fast-moving objects, you're lacking a drive mode on this camera. Having a drive mode for photos can be a lifesaver. Would you rather take 5 shots or 30 shots in a span of time? Missing drive mode in photo scenarios is kind of a bummer. There is no raw photo taking capability, so that's another reason that this isn't photo first for sure. I mean, yeah, you can take photos, but being able to edit raw photos is a huge one for photographers. So the most I would use this for photos is for maybe thumbnails, YouTube thumbnails. This camera, the FX3 body, I understand it needs to get that box shape and everything, but at least add like an optional viewfinder or some sort of just attachment that I could add to the hot shoe. Taking this out in direct sunlight, it definitely has its faults using a small screen like this. So I'm just going to read off some of the differences between the FX30 and the FX30 now. So obviously the sensor is APS-C, and it's 26 megapixels compared to the 6000 series 24 megapixels. So this is a new sensor, which is nice to see. And Let's see if they use this sensor onwards in the A7000 series maybe. So it has a different native ISO, which is 800 and 2500 if you're using Cine EI, which is recommended for basically locking yourself to those base ISOs for the least amount of noise and basically the best performance that this camera can offer. It has black screw holes on the top and the side. The 4K 120 is cropped very heavily, and I'll have some examples of this in the B-roll, but it is definitely something to consider. Although the fact that it offers it is very nice, but if you're using 4K 120 on this camera, you definitely have to consider your focal range. So it has 14 advertised stops instead of the 15 on the FX3. And also it is very light. It's slightly lighter at about 562 grams with no lens or anything attached versus the FX3 630 grams. And I could definitely feel it using the FX3 all the time and then picking this camera up. So the FX30 has more face modes, AF face modes, than the A7S III and even the FX3. It's the same as the A7 IV, so it has the human, the animal, and the bird. However, FX3 and the A7S III lack bird autofocus. I think they really need to just align all the AF focus modes to every camera, because it's just weird not to have it, not to include it when you can. And speaking of internal codecs, it includes them all from the FX3, A7S III, which is great. I love the H.265 heavily compressed codec. So one of the things they brought came to the A7 IV, and now it's here in the FX30 as well, the FX6, is focus breathing compensation. So basically what focus breathing is when you change the focus on a lens, whether it's from the infinity to very macro, the image frame changes basically, and you can kind of tell this with most lenses. So another cool thing I think they did was making basically two sets of the FX30. So you have an option to buy one without the top handle, or you can buy one with the top handle. And I think the reason for that is, vloggers or perhaps YouTubers, they don't require that top handle. Maybe for more professional scenarios, it would make sense to use that top handle. But for vloggers or YouTubers, like what I'm using right now, the Hot Shoe mic, is more than enough, and it provides a great result. Okay, so I'm walking with the 18 to 35 lens at 18 millimeters. This is with stabilization, just walking up this hill. Beautiful, beautiful path, by the way. Well done, Japan. Well done. Anyway, let's turn on active stabilization and compare. Here we go. So active stabilization crops in just a little bit, but gives you some more stabilization, electronic stabilization, to provide a cleaner shot. You don't get stabilization, active stabilization at 4K 120. And that's the same for the FX3 and A7S III. So, okay, downsides of the FX30. Really, some downsides of the FX3 as well, and we'll touch on that. So, number one, the way Sony markets this camera is cinema. It even says it on the body, cinema. The problem I have with that is you have the FX6 and the FX9 that are also under the cinema line, but the differences between the FX30, FX3, and those FX6 and FX9 are very clear cut. What I would have liked to have seen, and even in the FX3, is waveform. So right now we have histogram, which is not the best way to sort of read your exposure, where in your image, how much of it is exposed, what is being exposed, is it the highlights, is it the mids, is it the shadows. Whereas in the FX6, it is a much more clear and concise readout. And additionally, it has two lines that show where my zebras are set to. If I go above this, I'll start to overexpose, etc. So definitely is very helpful to have. But I want to talk about the image quality of this camera and the new sensor. Compared to the A7S III and the FX3, there's definitely more of a digital look, more sharp, and definitely less cinematic, so to speak. It does include S-Cinetone, which is awesome. You're getting a lot of video camera for your money when you consider the other options that Sony has around the same price point. You have the A7 IV, which is a great camera in itself, but it has less capability in video. So you have to consider, what do I do more of? Do I do more video or do I do more photo? For A7 IV, I'd say 80% is photo and 20% would be video, and this camera would be 80% video and maybe 20% photo. I have a buildup of full frame lenses, so there's just something holding me back from even buying this as a second camera. For anybody who's a YouTuber and wants to get that awesome camera and is looking to make a switch to Sony, or perhaps even has an APS-C camera already with some APS-C lenses, then I think the FX30 is really end game for a lot of people. So I had my Mitarashi Dango. I'm still hungry. I hiked up a mountain, which was fun. So I'm going to close out this video. Thanks for watching. See ya.